Would you take a pill that made you smarter?
Would you rather know it all and be unhappy or be blissfully ignorant?
What is the magic bullet to becoming smarter?
Okay, welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and we'd love it if you'd like and share this video, subscribe, all that jazz. Hey, leave a comment down there. It really helps. Yeah.
And that must make me Casey Rochford. And there will be music, which one of us has written, or both of us, or neither of us. And you'll find it at the end of the episode where you will, having hit the subscribe button already, enjoy the tunes. So, what kind of interesting topic would you like to discuss today?
Well, I think we've had this on our I guess agenda or our list for a long time, and I think maybe we could spend a little bit of time talking about smart drugs.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the concept?
So, I mean, there's a few different meanings that might have, as far
Hmm.
as I understand. So, of course, there are certain drugs you can take to increase mental clarity, stay awake longer to study more.
Yeah.
But then there's also like not really drugs, but more like, I don't know, let's say like vitamins, minerals, and amino acids or whatever that might possibly increase your aptitude for learning, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the latter, I think they're called neurotropics,
Uh-huh.
and so they typically have a more subtle effect. Whereas like the first one you mentioned would be, caffeine, amphetamines, things like
Mhm.
that those have a very noticeable effect and are more like a stimulant, whereas nootropics are not necessarily a stimulant and
Yeah.
do various things. And it's something that's not really fully understood, but I've experimented with some of those. Centrophenoxine, hydrogen, and pyracetam, or the acetam, racetam family. And they do definitely have an effect. It's something that's builds up over time. So it's like the more you take it over time and you start noticing that things are different, I guess.
Uh-huh. I, I've never really delved into that so much, but I have tried kind of exercising the brain, and
Mm-hmm.
I've had quite a bit of success with that, where you kind of take a little time each day to train your brain in a certain way by like providing it challenges or running it through certain processes, like, simple math or
Yeah.
memory exercises,
Well,
word
even doing like
puzzles.
a daily crossword, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That
My
kind of
grandpa
thing.
did that. Like he did crossword puzzles every day, stayed super sharp his whole
Hmm.
life. Um, and he was better at those than I ever could have been, like even with pop culture stuff. And I was like, what? How
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
I don't
certainly,
even
yeah.
understand this question. How do you just like know it? Like,
Well, and now we have things like brilliant, the that website and service where you learn things, which probably
it's
would be, and it's kind
probably
of like a
similar to
game.
Lumosity. Have you heard of that one? I
Yeah,
tried that for a while and
there's several out there, and yeah,
yeah.
and And that's certainly, obviously, your brain is kind of just like any muscle, right? Where the more you
Yeah.
work it, the better it gets, and the stronger and more capable it gets. But you know, these smart drugs are kind of, I guess, a you could say it's kind of a shortcut, or a way of doing. Well, maybe some of them, like say centrofenoxine, is supposed to remove lipofuscin from your brain, like essentially corrosion, I guess you could equate it to,
Huh.
stuff that gets in the way of neural communication that builds up
Your
as you age.
your basic rust, dust, and nicotine stains, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like something like that isn't necessarily boosting, but it's more like clearing out all the cobwebs, essentially.
Well, I was gonna say like another kind of tried and true non-drug inducing sort of technique that works is removing a lot of the noise. Like my
Yeah.
senior year in at university, I got rid of my smartphone and got like a dumb phone, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and it completely helped me uh, pay more attention to my studies.
Oh
And
yeah. Well, and there's
just that
people.
alone was enough to like boost my mental cognition and
Yeah, focus. That's
yeah.
an important factor. And in fact, there's people. So I have a Tandy little Model 100, like basically computer that's powered off of batteries, but it's got a little black and white display. Doesn't have any internet. Doesn't have any other software. It basically runs DOS, and it has a couple of things like a document editor, like a Word pad, essentially, and it has a keyboard, and a really nice keyboard, I might add. But there's a lot of people who buy those for writing books or something, because it's like there's no distraction. So you could take that thing, and it runs off of like AA batteries and lasts for like a month on 4 AA batteries. So you can
Hmm.
basically just have nothing else around you. You could go into the middle of the woods and just be typing away, and that's something too. Yeah, a lot of people. In fact, one of the things that I want to get at some point, they're kind of pricey. There's a kind of a e-ink tablet, I guess you could call it, called the Remarkable 2. And it's kind of like one of these things. Like it's a LCD tablet thing, but it has like software running on it. So you can do extra things. And but it doesn't have apps. You can't like peruse the internet. There's no notifications. There's no like
Uh,
Facebook or something. And it like people have said, oh, well, why would you buy one of those? You could just get an iPad. Well, yeah, but the iPad has all this extra fluff in it. Like
right.
you can easily get distracted. Whereas having a thing that's a purpose built, basically just a digital notepad, like paper notepad that you draw and write on, um, that yeah, that
Hmm.
completely removes distraction.
Yeah, like I mean, eh, I don't think there's ever going to be like a drug that makes you smart because you always, I mean, it's just like exercise. You can't take a drug that makes you thin.
Yeah,
Um, you can have something that maybe helps you increase metabolism, but you still have to put in work, right? So no matter what, like if you want to become smarter, uh, you have to read things, you have to watch others, you have to listen to others, you have to study, try over and over again. Like you have to put in the work.
for
So
sure.
my my personal preference for finding some way of augmenting your ability to retain or comprehend information is to remove a lot of distraction. Like the whole idea of unplugging
Hmm.
in and resetting, or you know even meditating to kind of filter things. That's another thing that
Oh
I've
yeah,
done that
meditation.
helped a great deal with school.
Hmm.
Um, like there's so much to be said for that. Like having just lost both my parents in the span of 36 days, I've had an enormous amount of things running through my head, like I have to do this, I have to do that, and like how do I time this and that? And I'm in Germany and they were in America and blah, 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 blah. Like it got to the point where my head was like really loud and I couldn't sleep like
Mhm.
at all because my brain just would not shut up.
Hmm.
And that drove me crazy. Like I hate when that happens.
Oh
And
yeah.
you just have
Well,
to like unplug for a minute and
yeah.
let
Unplug
it
and
simmer.
have
Yeah.
some having some structure too is probably one of the most beneficial things. And like for instance, you have kind of a schedule of things that you do or an itinerary, let's say.
Mhm.
I don't like the idea of schedules like, oh, 9 a.m. I do this thing and I do this at that time. No, I'd like to have sort of a, well, like I have a bunch of these LCD tablets and I write down all the things I need to do and I cross them off as I do them. And it's like, okay, today I want to get these things done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when, like maybe I'll look at the list and say, okay, well, these are things I'll do after I get home from work, right?
Right.
Before anything else. But I always take a little leisure time. So it's like I come home from work, I look at the list, and like, oh, I could start the laundry, right? And maybe clean this thing or put the dishes away or whatever. And then I'll
Yeah.
sit down and play a couple video games and unwind a bit. And then look back at the list and like, okay, well, before I go to sleep, I need to get these things done. Um, and it's very
Yeah.
helpful. That's like having that structure. It gives you like, and this is where
Well, a
these are dirt
combination.
cheap too. Like
Yeah.
having it in tangible form where it's like, oh, there's
Yeah.
a thing here,
I
and I'm
love to-do
writing it down.
lists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a very beneficial thing.
Well, yeah,
Um,
any combination of organizational techniques is great. Like I actually am a big proponent for scheduling.
mm,
Not that you have to like stick hard and fast to it or even complete the entire task in the time that you've allotted yourself.
mm,
It's more uh, like if you have some degree of ADD, it it really helps to create these benchmarks
mm,
and time points where you can maybe look forward to like, oh, I don't really want to be doing this, but like I'll just focus for 20 more minutes and then I can take a break or move on to the next thing. And
yeah,
then there's also the whole project management style of things where you have tiered lists. Like these are things that have to be done now. These are things that need to be done in certain time periods or in certain order.
yeah,
And then these are like side quests that, you know, like if I happen to get a chance, I can do that or
back
whatever.
burner kind of things. And
Yeah.
that's what I do for like my shopping list. Like I have, well, it's on my phone typically because
Mhm.
I like if I go to the store, that's what I have with me, so
Yeah.
I can reference that. But I have things kind of stacked according to priority. So it's like, okay, if I go to the store, the things like, okay, I need toilet paper, I need cat food, so those go on the top of the list. And then there's things that kind of in descending order of importance, where it's like, oh yeah, long term, one of these days, if I have a bunch of extra cash, I'd like to get an e-bike, right?
Yeah.
But that's an expensive thing, and it's not really a priority. But it would be a nice, just as a like a reminder. It's like, you know, that
Yep.
that's a
I
good
do
thing.
that too. I do that
Hmm.
too. Like
And
I'll put random shit on my shopping list that's like, you know, stuff you don't go shopping for like
yeah, yeah,
as a grocery, you know, like
sort of like a wish list, maybe.
yeah,
Just keeping it in your vision, I guess, at
milk,
some point.
eggs, coat hangers. What?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly. Um, but okay, so getting back to smart drugs though, yeah, I think you're right. There's no way that taking some kind of pill is going to like make you smart or raise your IQ. However, what I noticed from especially pyricetam hydrogen combinations is that it does slowly increase mental clarity and like
hmm,
essentially your calculation speed, I suppose. Yeah, how you can compute things does
huh,
it does actually improve, but it doesn't make you smart because, like you said, acquiring knowledge and skill and things that that doesn't come in a pill. That comes from
right.
experience, but it's like the ability to acquire and store that information can be improved through some of these things. Um,
Yeah.
but there's still, again, there's not a lot of data, like research on into this. There is a little,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot because, well, for one, it's like a lot of these things are out of patent, so nobody cares. And like aside from maybe Alzheimer's research, I think people there have been some promising studies regarding that. But like,
A lot of that stuff is just like removing plaque from neural pathways or whatever that like I I feel like a lot of the stuff that really works is working in the negative sense. It's like removing blockades of some kind.
sure,
Because like humans really aren't we're not really evolved to handle all the input that we
no,
handle on a daily basis,
no, 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 no. Yeah, exactly. We evolved in a completely different world than we live in now. So,
Mhm.
we're built to handle that world, which is why like hypertension and stress and stuff are such a prevalent thing in our modern society
Yeah,
because like we're dealing with these things and our body reacts as if it's like a physical threat when it's
yeah,
not. It's just an existential threat, I guess. And these things are fairly modern in their existence. So it's like our bodies are reacting to something that it's like it's interpreting a non-threat as a threat, and then you respond, but then there's no release. Like, okay, back in the day, you hear something and it's oh shit, it's a tiger, and you run and
yeah,
climb a tree and stuff, and but you're like react like physically responding to a physical threat. And then when it's done, okay, well, it's done. That's okay. Tiger walks away. I'm safe, and you relax. Whereas nowadays, all these things are kind of virtual, that
yeah.
they don't, there's no physical response you can have to a bunch of people on Facebook talking smack about you, like you can't do anything about that. Or
Yeah.
like computer related stuff or stuff related to your like, oh, your finances, right? Like money troubles, that I think is a big problem. Like people just constantly worry like, oh god, how am I going to pay this bill? Like that didn't exist thousands of years ago.
Right.
So uh, but we respond the same way. And so that's
Mhm.
something that goes into what you're talking about, removing the noise, essentially.
Yeah.
Stoicism. We've done an episode about stoicism.
Yeah.
Link probably up there somewhere.
Yep.
Maybe over there. I don't know what how.
Yeah, I think it's that way.
Yeah. But stoicism is certainly a way to manage that kind of thing and sort of bring down all the racket, all the chatter and stuff,
Mhm.
and eliminate that and kind of focus yourself, because it's like there's no you we waste so much of our time and energy and our lives, actually, because stress and hypertension is probably the biggest killer of all.
Oh
uh
yeah.
so but we waste so much of it on things that we can't do anything about. We actually can't change any of that, like money worries, right? Oh, well, I have a job, I have these bills are coming due, and I don't have enough money. Well,
Yeah.
worrying about it doesn't change it. You need to like push that aside and logically analyze the situation and come up with a solution to it. And sometimes there is
Yeah.
no solution. Sometimes you're like, well, you know what, I'm fucked. And if that's the case, then there's still nothing to worry about. Like, what worrying doesn't impact the world around you, it only impacts yourself. And it,
Yeah.
it, it can cause you to basically, like, people, but like with the money trouble thing, like you it's easy to get really focused on that, and in doing so, it basically makes it impossible to come up with a solution, because you're so much of your mental energy is devoted to worrying that you can't take the time and divert some of those resources to finding a solution.
Yeah.
You might be blinded to solutions too, and like spinning your wheels. Like I see it all the time where people are like, oh, there's no way. And it's like, there's actually thousands of ways. I know, maybe you don't want to take this particular job because you'd rather be doing this, right? Something else. Well, but you can't do that, right? Okay, sure, you're a great artist, but you can't just suddenly create a career being an artist out of thin air.
Mhm.
There's more pressing things like, oh, I don't know, how am I going to pay the utility bill, or how am I going to get some food, or fill up the gas tank or something. It's like, okay, well, you know what? Just get a job doing whatever for a while. It's not permanent. It doesn't have to be. Like, well, when we were running the business, I on the side I worked at Domino's delivering pizza.
Mhm.
It's like, sure, I would love it if our business generated enough revenue that I
Right.
didn't have to do that. But it's like, okay, well, I got bills to pay basically.
Yep.
And it turned out that actually pizza delivery was kind of fun.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I speaking of like things working in the negative, there's also things that you can take that directly negatively impact your ability to be smarter or learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm this is how much of a nerd I am. The first time I tried marijuana, I like grabbed a notebook and started taking scientific observations on the reduction in cognitive ability that I had. I was like, oh, I ordered a pizza and I couldn't even calculate the tip. You know, you know, at the time I was using that lumosity or whatever that I had mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where it would quantify your, like uh,
Cognitive ability.
yeah,
Or,
speed of thought, it measured creativity, as far as like coming up with, you know, synonyms or antonyms, for certain words,
mm,
things like that. And you would get like actual statistics on that stuff and you'd be able to track it. So I was doing Lumosity sober and then doing it high, and you could see an obvious, I mean, of course, like, sure, there's bias. I'm my own test subject. I'm
yeah.
making my own observations, but still, like, trying to be as objective as possible, there was a marked difference in cognitive ability. The only thing that went up was creativity, which
Yeah.
was kind of cool, right? Like to be able to see how that does affect the brain
Mm-hmm.
and how it can actually be beneficial in a artistic way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in all things there's a give and a take.
Hmm.
Like even alcohol
Yeah.
can have a positive effect in one area, but it also can have a negative in another.
Yeah.
And I think all those things are like that. And there's a place for that too. I think that we don't necessarily always need to be super smart.
No.
And maybe even focusing on that might be a waste of time. It might even cause like more stress.
Mhm.
There's like the saying goes, ignorance is bliss, right? It's kind of like when I was much happier just in general when I didn't know anything, when I was
Oh yeah.
totally dumb. And the more I know now, well, okay, so there was kind of a like a timeline, I suppose, this path that I went on where here I am completely dumb, don't know anything, and I'm just like, wow, super happy, butterflies and rainbows and stuff. And as I learned more and more, I became more and more cynical. Um,
Mhm.
and then it's kind of like it hit this kind of breaking point where I was like so cynical that it's like, man, everything sucks. And then I kind of started getting into stoicism, and now it's like a release where it's like, yeah, I know all these things and know pretty much how a lot of things work, and but not intimately perfectly. Like that's kind of my goal, is to sort of whittle it down to the finer, like the most basic functionality of how things work, and
Mhm.
comprehend that. But it's like at this point, I don't care. Like it doesn't affect me. Like, yeah, it can be overwhelming too. It's the thing that's like people start digging into conspiracy theories, right? And it's a, I guess you could call it a rabbit hole, but it's more like a black hole. Like it sucks you in and changes you, and you know that it's very easy to get caught up in that, and you go from one conspiracy theory to another, and start collecting all these and start forming this image about the world, like, oh my god, they're out to get us, they're everywhere, like there's
Yeah.
this the Illuminati or something, the whole world is one giant conspiracy, like, and that, yeah, I don't know what spawned that, but I mean that's kind of something having to do with like focus, I guess.
Yeah.
All the
Well,
noise.
and
We have so access to too much information right now, I think.
yeah, and knowledge being like a double-edged sword. Like the more knowledge you have, the more potential you have to better your life, better yourself and your surroundings, better your world. But also, the more you understand how shitty things are, how nigh impossible things might be, in regards to achieving better things for humanity or for yourself, So it's
Yeah.
like it's almost like that whole Down syndrome, like a symptom, if you will, is happiness. Uh, like just constantly like happy. And that's maybe not so much of a like an anomaly as it is just like a blissful ignorance of how shitty your situation is. Like when you know things are shitty for you, when you know you'll die young, that changes you.
It does.
Like when you can comprehend that and know what that means, and like you just get bogged down with like, oh, well, I'm gonna miss out on all this and that. But when you just live and you enjoy each day as if it could be your last, but you're not even like that aware. Like it's not on your mind, like, oh, I have to enjoy today because I might die. Uh,
Well,
You
and
just,
that's a good point, that maybe, I mean, if it, in the face of adversity, like you're saying, this sense of mortality or
Mhm.
impending death or something, that you could it could go two ways. I mean, you could take it down the path of like you just sit there and dwell on it, and just kind of stir the pot of depression, like, oh god, this is so terrible, and that is your life.
Yeah,
Or you could be like, hey, there's only so much time left, I better make it count, make this a
yep,
good one, like, and that, because yeah, for me it's like, I believe, like the hedonistic life, right? Just live to the best ability that you have, and enjoy life. But at the same time, I think, well, what do I want to leave behind? Like, because you obviously you can't take wealth or anything with you.
yeah,
So I would like to leave behind a legacy of improvement in some way, even if it's a little tiny thing. Like, hey, because of me, one person's life turned around and is better, or some invention, right, that
mhm,
transforms the world in some, even if it's not a huge way, but maybe it's a significant way in down in the lower levels, I guess, or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
as seen on TV thing, right? Hey, you invent a kitchen gadget that makes, I don't know, some process that used to be tedious now easy. Like,
yeah,
okay, does that really transform the world? Not really, but it makes people's lives better, and that in itself is an accomplishment, and I think that's worthy. But that's the thing, like, it, I think that's important for everybody. Everybody has the ability to do something like that, even if it's just you help one person here or one person there, or donate to a charity or whatever. Um, yeah, we should be all doing that, and I think the world would be a much better place.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like in the end, I think until we get to a point where it's like the Matrix and you can just be like, hey, I need to know how to like skydive and they download it to your brain. Um, like I think I'd rather just kind of do things the way I do it now, like I don't want to look for any kind of shortcuts that are honestly just gimmicks at this point. Like if you can't really have a tried and true way of becoming smart with a shortcut, um, why not just make do with what you have?
That's true. Well, and
Yeah.
all these things, like a lot of the neurotropics, they don't like I was saying, they don't really make you smart, but they might assist, especially if you have some kind of mental blockade or something. It can be an assistant to increasing your intellect or intellectual capacity or something like that, your computational methodology or something. um and I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's all about expectation. It's the I think it's kind of a it's wrong to call those things smart drugs,
Yeah.
because it doesn't make you smart. um but
Results may vary.
yeah, well, and everybody, and that's the thing too, like you were talking about earlier, we were talking about like our organizational uh processes, and that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
The way to learn, and this is something I take issue with like the education system, like it's a one size fits all thing when human beings do not learn in the same way. Some
Right.
people take to a particular style more than others, and some may, like, oh yeah, if you're teaching a particular way, some people might not learn at all, you know.
Okay. So in fairness, looking back on life in school, in private and public school in America, I do remember at a pretty young age being evaluated for how I learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I, my criticism, my critique, if you will, is that they really don't drive home quite enough how much importance there is for you to not only learn how you learn, but to understand it and use it as a tool,
Yeah.
because that is crucial. Like
Oh,
you
for
will
sure.
struggle so much if you keep trying to learn the way that people tell you you're supposed to, if it doesn't work for you.
Well, and that's where like I side more with like Cicero's methodology. Um, and because, well, at least in the US, the public education system, as it stands, it's more like data. Like you basically you absorb information and regurgitate it. That's all it is. Learning isn't something where like,
But that is all you need if you know how you learn. If you're given information and you know how to absorb it best for you, you've got everything you need at your fingertips.
true, but they don't do that, and that's the thing. It's like in teaching
But we're
people,
we're we're
teaching.
responsible for that ourselves, though.
Well,
Like,
we
and that's the
are
point I'm trying to make. Like, they don't drive that home enough.
that exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like we should be teaching people how to learn, how to
Yeah.
discover that way that you learn, and then inspiring a desire to learn more.
Yep.
Would you like to know more? To quote Starship Troopers. Um,
The
yeah,
more
like
you know.
yeah. um, that, because at that point you don't, essentially a school, once you've built that foundation of learning and an explorative desire, I guess. A school could basically just be a library and some laboratories. It wouldn't need any teachers. Just a place where you are free to explore and discover and grow your knowledge and expertise. And it seems more like schools are, well, it's a one size fits all thing. Like, okay, there's only one, a teacher teaches the whole classroom in one way. Um, Obviously, that's not a good thing. And it's more the focus is so heavily on grades, and grades, of course, are subjective. Like, oh,
Yeah.
these are the things you're tested on because we've decided these are the things you're going to be tested on. Maybe they have no idea what they're even looking at, but that's how it is, and you pass or fail.
Yeah. I mean, there's theoretically a I'm forgetting the word for it. But like it kind of like a master key to grading work,
Mm,
right? Like where theoretically it's very objective and very impartial. But of course, as we say often, and correctly so, there's really no way to completely remove bias
no,
uh,
no,
from
and
anything. So,
well, let's take history for instance. Sure, there's an objective way you could say, hey, this person has under or has comprehended the things that we decided they need to know about history, right? They know all the names, they know all the times, whatever, specific events or something like that. And that's all fine and good. But like, I hated history until much later in life, when it's like, when I realized history isn't about the names and dates, it's about life experience, these experiences, and the
right.
why. Like, how did these things come to play out? How? Like, and there's really fascinating stories behind a lot of things. And
Well, that's it. That's
mm-hmm,
instead of being a class, instead of rote memorization, which helps absolutely nothing,
mm-hmm,
it should just be an hour a day of storytelling. Like,
yeah,
hey, this is things that happened in our past that are really important to like hear about
mm-hmm,
and just have in the back of your head.
yeah,
And that's it. Like there is no grade. There's no point to grading your knowledge of history. There's not even a point to have a degree in history. Like
yeah.
what exactly are you excelling at? Memorizing things that
It's a good
happened a
point.
long time ago?
Mm-hmm,
What you're doing stuff that anybody else could if they put their mind to it. Like going back, researching things
mm-hmm.
and telling a story.
Well, and it's having the knowledge of the interconnection between all these things too. That's a thing.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, you
Wow.
could look on Wikipedia and know all the details, but like, okay, there's more to the story, that like having a comprehension of all the interconnected uh aspects, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I think we're
we all kind of diverged into history from smart drugs. It never ceases to amaze the pathways that the kitchen sink drain takes us into.
mm-hmm, yeah.
Somewhere around the U bend, we get into
Yeah. Well, I probably have to get going.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
guess we can call it a day or a night or whatever. And yeah.
And there's A really groovy song queuing up. I think I hear it coming in on the wind.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. All right. Well, peace out, everybody, and tune in for next time.